Hello friends and welcome back to the channel. So today we have a very specific argument to discuss, which is depression. Now, I've chosen this argument for this video because over the last few days, perhaps even over the last few weeks, I have been feeling a little bit down. Now, this may be because of different things that have been happening, like some uncertainty in terms of my health and an operational paralysis in business, and other things that lead the mood downwards. Now, this situation has brought me to ask myself a very specific question, which is related to today's video. This question is, where is the line between depression and just feeling down, just feeling bad? Because I think it's a very thin line that is almost impossible to precisely put somewhere. When does someone change from just feeling down to being depressed? Because there has to be a certain level at which a psychologist or a psychiatrist, I don't really know who the professional is that makes this decision, says this guy's now depressed or this guy is just feeling down a bit. And without having done any research about this specific topic online, I want to speak my mind so that I don't get influenced from what I read, but just base myself on my experience. And then perhaps we can engage in the comment section about our beliefs in regards to this topic. Now, the first question that I want to ask is, what is depression? Now, personally, I would describe depression as a lack of meaning, a lack of purpose, which ultimately leads an individual to miss the point of living the life. And this basically leads to the second question, which is, why are these days more and more individuals feeling depressed? Because I remember very well, just 10 years ago, depression was not such a big thing that everyone was discussing and that you would hear on the internet so much about. And who knows, like 50 years ago, how much this was discussed. And for some reason, my gut tells me that it was not trendy at all compared to these days. So what has brought humans to being diagnosed more and more as depressed? I've asked myself this question, and the most reasonable answer that I have been able to come up with is comfort, essentially. Evolution of humanity brings our lives to be lived in more and more comfort as we go forward. Now, thought experiment. Let's say that 1,500 years ago, if I was hungry, I would have had to go in the wild, go in the woods, hunt a deer with my bow, with my spear, or with whatever, and then bring the animal back home, cook it, and put it on the table for me and my family to consume. This wasn't an easy task at all. It would involve danger, it would involve doubt, because who knows if I actually come back home with something to eat. And as a consequence, being able to achieve the goal, being able to bring home the food, the deer in this case, is an exceptional moment that makes dopamine run through my system like nothing else. But these days, on the other hand, all I have to do is go to the grocery store, buy some food, and bring it home, perhaps even already cooked. Easy, probably one of the easiest things that I do on a daily basis. And this has a significant impact on the perceived value of things, which, again, personally, I think it's the base of why depression is rising so much in our society. Whatever we do, like in this case, getting food, has become so easy and comfortable to achieve that it doesn't fill us with any sense of pride. If I bring a deer home after I've hunted it down in the woods, I would walk through the door with my head up, chest pumped, and it would be a heck of a moment. So essentially, what I have come up with being the primary cause of this big virus of depression that is infecting a great percentage of our population nowadays is the perceived value of things. Everything is perceived as way less valuable than it was naturally supposed to be perceived. I made the example with the food, but this can also be applied on cleaning, for example. We have such great products nowadays that I just need to spray it once on a surface, wipe it with a towel, and that surface is amazingly cleaned, perfect. While a few years ago, let's say, my grandma would have had to wipe that surface 10 times to achieve the same result. These are just a few examples that may not make that much sense, but any smart viewer that is watching this video has understood what I'm trying to explain here. And as a consequence, which is the way to defeat the depression? Which is the way to make sure that we don't fall into this trap of getting harmed by the very low perceived value of things that we have? Well, it's doing hard things. For example, when it's the time that I feel the most proud of myself, well, once I'm done doing something very hard, once I'm done with a very painful workout, I take the shower and I get out of the gym. That's the most amazing feeling because I'm proud of myself and I know that I have achieved something that most people are not even willing to go through. And what it does at the end of the day is enhance the value that I have of what I've done and as a consequence of myself. I really believe hard work in this case is the best way to make it out of this. Now, as a premise, I don't know if I've ever been depressed. I don't know how it feels like to be depressed if I have never been depressed, which is by itself something very complex to understand, I believe, because it's something very uh, dependent on the individual. I know there is such thing that defines individuals as clinically depressed, which may have to do with hormones, perhaps, so chemicals, something that we can actually precisely identify through biology, which is different to the depression that I am referring to right now. Because if I'm not mistaken, most depressed people are just diagnosed by psychologists or psychiatrists that ask them a few questions. So the way that I reply to a few questions is decisive on whether I am depressed or not, which is very dangerous because people reply what they want to reply, not necessarily the truth. If I feel like being a victim, be I could be diagnosed with depression essentially because I just have to reply to a few questions. There's not a blood exam, there's not a scan of my body, there's nothing about it. Which also makes it very easy to manipulate the amount of depressed people that we have. Now, I don't want to get much into the conspiracy part of it with the pharmaceutical companies that prescribe all sort of stuff for depressed people to make them feel better. Let's leave that for another day. Let's leave that out for now. What I want to focus on is on viewers of this video that are not sure about whether they are depressed or that have just been diagnosed with depression from a psychologist or whatsoever. I would like to speak to them directly now. And I would invite them to write down below in the comments how they actually feel about it. What tells them that they feel depressed? Has it just been the psychologist? What is it? Has it just been that conversation with him? Have they been convinced that they are depressed? which also would make it very interesting. So, how would I face depression based on how I understand it? Not based on how a psychologist or someone that knows more about it than myself would describe it. Based on how I understand it, the first way that I would fight depression would be through hard work, as I already said in this video. Personally, I believe that depression is a cause of a lack of meaning, a lack of purpose, which kills your emotional state. It beats you down to zero. So, if you are able to enhance the perceived value of things again through the hard work, because then achieving them actually means something, then this might be the easiest and the easiest way to understand, but the hardest way to apply to make it out of this shit. The second way that I think could actually be effective is by manipulating your own brain into believing that depression doesn't even exist. And this is a very interesting one. So it's hard to do and also to understand because these two things actually go hand in hand. If you understand it, you can also do it. Imagine if a purple object defines itself as a yellow object. Now, everyone around that object would still say that that object is purple, but if the purple object itself defines itself as yellow, it's yellow in its reality, and as a consequence, it's not affected from being purple. It may sound a bit complicated, but at the end of the day, what I'm trying to tell you here is that if you are able to tell your mind that depression doesn't exist, how can you be depressed? Now, the third way that I think someone could help himself if he is in such a situation is by remembering that they want you to be depressed. Demoralization is your enemy greatest weapon. Now, who is your enemy? Well, your enemy is whoever wants to control you. Now, again, without getting into anything that has to do with conspiracy theories, a king has to control its peasants. If the peasants are too poor, they're going to rebel against him and put him in danger. If the peasants are feeling too well, they might challenge his authority and his crown is going to be at risk. So the king has to make sure his peasants are somewhere in the middle, feeling fine, feeling comfortable, but not feeling that great to the point that his authority will be challenged. And I believe, or better said, I feel like this is a bit going on within our society. We are comfortable, we feel okay where we are, but at the same time, there's a bit of depression, there's a bit of this feeling down as a consequence of discomfort. And this is actually the way that I am using right now the most to make it out of this feeling down a bit that I have, which is that I light the fire inside of me up with the awareness that they want me to be depressed. They want me to feel demoralized so that their authority won't be challenged. Now, who is they? I don't know. It might be us. It might be ourselves. It might be a group. I don't know. What I do know is that I am controlled by my environment, and my environment is controlled by something or someone, which, through making me feel down a bit, depressed, or however we want to describe it, has control over my actions. So, what I do is use the awareness of knowing that someone is trying to control me by making me feel down a bit, by demoralizing myself, so that I don't take the actions that may challenge his authority once I get at a certain level. I use this to light the fire inside of me up and actually push through. Now, I hope you have enjoyed this video because I have certainly enjoyed thinking about this topic live as I speak to the camera. Now, again, I don't know if I have ever feel depressed. I don't know if I've never felt depressed. What I do know is that it's a very strange argument, and my gut tells me that there is something behind it that we do not fully comprehend. It's being used in a way that is not optimal for our society. That's the only thing that I feel like is going on, and that I have some proof about too, because a spike like the one we have seen in diagnosis of depression is very unusual. So please let me know down below in the comments what you think about it. I would love to engage in this discussion with the viewers, and make sure to subscribe if you don't want to miss future videos. Bye bye.